She was 8 months pregnant when her husband's mistress slapped her in court. What happened next exposed a murder, revealed her real father was the judge, and brought down a millionaire's empire. This is Sarah Mitchell's story, and by the end, you'll understand why 20 million people called it the slap heard around the world. But first, smash that subscribe button and bell icon, because stories like Sarah's deserve to be heard. Let's begin. The mahogany doors of the courthouse swung open with a groan that seemed to echo Sarah Mitchell's breaking heart. At 28 years old and 8 months pregnant, she moved with the careful grace of someone carrying precious cargo through a minefield. Her swollen belly stretched the fabric of her modest maternity dress, a stark contrast to the designer outfit she would have worn just 6 months ago, back when she still believed in fairy tales. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, one hand protectively cradling her stomach, where her unborn son kicked restlessly. The baby always seemed to know when she was anxious, responding to her emotional state with movements that felt like tiny protests against the chaos of the outside world. The courthouse corridor stretched before her like a tunnel of judgment. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that made everyone look guilty of something. Sarah's footsteps echoed off the marble floors, each click of her modest heels a countdown to the confrontation she'd been dreading for weeks. She'd arrived early, hoping to center herself before the divorce settlement hearing. Her millionaire ex-husband, Richard, would be there, of course, probably with his attorney, James Bradley, a shark in a $3,000 suit who'd made a career of helping wealthy men hide assets from their wives. But Sarah had her own legal champion now, Rebecca Taylor, a fierce advocate who'd taken her case pro bono after hearing about the narcissistic abuse Sarah had endured. The waiting area outside courtroom 3 was nearly empty at this hour. Sarah lowered herself carefully onto a wooden bench, her back aching from the extra weight she carried. She closed her eyes and practiced the breathing exercises Dr. Patricia Holbrook had taught her. In for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. Each breath was a small act of rebellion against the panic that threatened to overwhelm her. "You're not the naive girl who married him anymore," she reminded herself, feeling the baby shift position. "You're a mother now. You're strong." The transformation had been painful, but necessary. 6 months ago, she discovered Richard's affair through a text message he'd carelessly left open on his tablet. Madison Cole, or Madison Williams, as Sarah had recently learned was her real name, wasn't just another woman. She was a predator who targeted Richard specifically because of his wealth, and Richard had fallen for it completely. Or perhaps he'd simply been looking for an excuse to discard his young wife, like last season's fashion. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "On my way. Remember, you don't have to speak to them before the hearing. Stay strong." The attorney's words were meant to comfort, but they also reminded Sarah of what was coming. This wasn't just about dividing assets or determining custody arrangements for their unborn child. This was about reclaiming her life from a man who'd systematically destroyed her self-worth over 3 years of marriage. Young love, her mother, Helen, had called it before she passed away 2 years ago. "Be careful, sweetheart. Men like Richard don't marry women like us for love." Sarah hadn't understood it then. She'd been 25, fresh out of graduate school, with a degree in social work that she'd never gotten to use. Richard had swept her off her feet with private jets and charity galas, making her feel like she'd stepped into a different world, a better world, she'd thought. How wrong she'd been. The elevator dinged, and Sarah's entire body tensed. Even before she looked up, she knew who it would be. There was a particular sound to Richard's walk, confident, measured steps that announced his importance to anyone within earshot. He emerged from the elevator in his signature navy suit, phone pressed to his ear, already conducting business as if this divorce was just another item on his schedule. Behind him, clicking along in designer heels that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, was Madison. She was everything Sarah wasn't: tall, sleek, with a kind of aggressive beauty that turned heads and broke hearts. At 35, she carried herself with the confidence of a woman who'd never heard the word no, and wouldn't accept it if she did. Sarah instinctively placed both hands over her belly, as if she could shield her baby from the toxic energy that seemed to radiate from the approaching couple. Yes, couple. Richard hadn't even tried to hide it. His arm was around Madison's waist, and she leaned into him with the possessive air of a woman marking her territory. Well, well, Madison's voice cut through the corridor like a blade. Look who's here, bright and early, trying to get sympathy points from the judge. Richard didn't even look at his soon-to-be ex-wife. He continued his phone conversation as if she were invisible, just another piece of furniture in the courthouse hallway. It was a practiced cruelty, this ability to make her feel like she didn't exist. Sarah didn't respond to Madison's taunt. Dr. Holbrook had taught her about the grey rock technique, becoming as uninteresting as possible to avoid feeding the narcissistic supply. She kept her eyes down, focusing on the gentle movements of her baby. Oh, come on, Madison pressed, moving closer. Surely you have something to say. Some pathetic plea about how Richard should think of his child. Newsflash, honey, he's already planning our family. Real children, not whatever mistake you're carrying. The words hit like physical blows, each one carefully calculated to wound. Sarah's hands trembled, but she didn't look up. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Madison, enough, Richard finally said, ending his call, but there was no real admonishment in his tone. If anything, he sounded amused. Save it for the courtroom. Why? Madison laughed, a tinkling sound that held no warmth. She needs to understand her place. Some little gold digger who thought she'd won the lottery. Well, sweetheart, lottery tickets expire. Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of them. The baby kicked hard, as if sensing her distress, and she rubbed soothing circles on her belly. That's enough. A new voice entered the conversation, strong, authoritative, and unexpectedly familiar. Sarah looked up to see a woman striding toward them with purpose. She was in her early 30s, with auburn hair pulled back in a professional bun and eyes that blazed with righteous anger. She wore a sharp business suit and carried herself like someone used to being heard. And you are? Madison asked, her tone dripping with disdain. Emma Patterson, the woman replied, positioning herself between Sarah and her tormentors. Attorney, and you're about to be defendants in a harassment suit if you don't step back right now. Richard's eyes narrowed. Patterson? As in Judge Patterson? Emma smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The very same. Now, I believe my client has a right to wait for her hearing without being accosted. Your client, James Bradley had arrived, looking every inch the high-powered attorney he was. I wasn't aware Mrs. Mitchell had changed representation. I'm consulting, Emma said smoothly. And right now, I'm documenting what looks very much like intentional infliction of emotional distress on a pregnant woman. Would you like to continue, Miss Cole? Or should I say, Miss Williams? Oh yes, we know all about your real name and your history. Madison's face paled slightly, but she recovered quickly. You don't scare me. I should, Emma replied. But please continue. Every word you say is just more evidence. The tension in the corridor was palpable. Richard finally seemed to realize the precarious position they were in. He took Madison's arm, steering her toward the other end of the hallway. "Let's go. This isn't worth our time." As they walked away, Madison threw one last look over her shoulder, a promise that this wasn't over. Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe, looking up at the woman who'd appeared like a guardian angel. "Thank you," she whispered. Emma's expression softened as she sat down beside Sarah. "You don't need to thank me. We're family after all." Sarah's brow furrowed in confusion. "I'm sorry, what?" "It's a long story," Emma said, glancing at the courtroom doors. "One that involves your mother, Helen Parker, and a father neither of us knew we shared. But right now, we need to focus on getting you through this hearing." The revelation hit Sarah like a lightning bolt. "We're sisters," Emma nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Half-sisters. I've been looking for you for months, ever since I discovered the truth. I'm sorry I'm only showing up now when you need help, but I promise you, Sarah, you're not alone anymore. You have family, and we protect our own." Before Sarah could process this shocking revelation, Rebecca Taylor arrived, her heels clicking efficiently across the marble floor. "Sarah, I'm here. Are you ready?" But Sarah wasn't listening. She was staring at Emma, seeing for the first time the familiar shape of her nose, the way she tilted her head when thinking. Little things that suddenly made sense. The baby kicked again, and Sarah gasped. "Are you okay?" both women asked simultaneously. I think I'm having a contraction," Sarah admitted, her hand going to her lower back where pain was starting to radiate. "It's probably just Braxton Hicks," Rebecca said, though concern colored her voice. "The stress of the day. We should get you some water." Emma was already moving, heading to the water fountain with a paper cup. As she did, the courtroom doors opened and a bailiff stepped out. "Mitchell versus Mitchell. Judge Patterson is ready for you." Sarah's eyes widened. "Judge Patterson? But that would be—" "Our father," Emma finished quietly. "He doesn't know you're his daughter. I haven't told him yet. I wanted to be sure you were okay with it first." The reality of the situation crashed over Sarah like a wave. She was about to face her millionaire ex-husband and his mistress in a divorce settlement hearing, presided over by a father she'd never known existed, while her newly discovered sister stood by her side, and her baby seemed determined to make his own dramatic entrance. "I can't do this," Sarah whispered. Emma took her hand, squeezing gently. "Yes, you can. You're stronger than you know. Mum would be so proud of you. You knew our mother? Only through stories and letters. But I know she loved you fiercely. And I know she'd want you to fight for yourself and your baby. So that's what we're going to do." Rebecca looked between them, clearly sensing there was more to the story, but professional enough not to pry. "We need to go in. Sarah, are you ready?" Sarah stood slowly, one hand on her belly, the other still clasped in Emma's. "I'm ready." The courtroom was smaller than Sarah had expected, more intimate, and therefore more intimidating. Dark wood paneling covered the walls, and morning light filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the floor. The American flag stood in one corner, a silent witness to the justice about to be sought or denied. Judge William Patterson sat behind the bench, an imposing figure even in his black robes. He was in his late 50s, with silver hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Sarah found herself searching his face for any resemblance, any hint of the connection Emma claimed they shared. "Please be seated," Judge Patterson instructed, his voice carrying the authority of 3 decades on the bench. "We're here for the matter of Mitchell versus Mitchell, case number 4739. I see both parties are present with counsel." Richard and Madison sat at the plaintiff's table with James Bradley. Madison shouldn't have been there. She had no legal standing in the proceedings. But Richard's arrogance knew no bounds. He wanted Sarah to see them together, to rub salt in the wound. Sarah took her seat between Rebecca and Emma, her back aching with each movement. The baby had been restless all morning, and the Braxton Hicks contractions were coming more frequently. She forced herself to focus on Rebecca's opening statement. "Your Honor," Rebecca began, standing with perfect posture, "we're here today to address the equitable distribution of marital assets and to establish custody arrangements for the child Mrs. Mitchell is carrying. My client has been subjected to narcissistic abuse throughout her marriage, including financial control, emotional manipulation, and infidelity." James Bradley stood before Rebecca could continue. "Objection, Your Honor. These are unsubstantiated allegations meant to prejudice the court." "Mr. Bradley," Judge Patterson said evenly, "this is a hearing, not a trial. I'll allow Ms. Taylor to present her case. You'll have your opportunity to respond." Rebecca nodded gratefully and continued. "My client discovered her husband's affair 6 months ago. Since then, she has been systematically cut off from marital funds, forced to rely on the charity of friends, and subjected to a campaign of harassment designed to break her spirit and force her to accept an unconscionable settlement." "That's ridiculous!" Madison burst out, ignoring the sharp look from James Bradley. "She's nothing but a gold digger who got pregnant to trap Richard." Judge Patterson's gavel came down hard. "Mrs. Cole, you are not a party to this case. If you cannot remain silent, you will be removed from my courtroom." Madison's face flushed with anger, but Richard placed a hand on her arm, and she subsided. Sarah noticed the calculating look in Madison's eyes and felt a chill run down her spine. This woman was dangerous, not just mean. "Mr. Bradley," Judge Patterson said, "please present your client's position." James Bradley stood, adjusting his tie with practiced ease. "Your Honor, my client, Richard Mitchell, has been more than generous. He's offered Mrs. Mitchell a settlement of $250,000, which is more than fair considering the length of the marriage and her limited contribution to the marital assets." "Limited contribution?" Rebecca's voice was sharp. "Mrs. Mitchell gave up her career to support her husband's business endeavors. She hosted his events, managed his household, and provided the stable home life that allowed him to build his fortune." "She was a housewife," Bradley countered dismissively. "Hardly a challenging role." Emma's hand found Sarah's under the table, squeezing in silent support. Sarah felt another contraction, stronger this time, and had to bite her lip to keep from gasping. Judge Patterson reviewed the documents before him. "I see here that Mr. Mitchell's net worth is estimated at $42 million. The proposed settlement represents less than 1% of that." "Your Honor," Bradley said smoothly, "most of those assets were acquired before the marriage or through business ventures in which Mrs. Mitchell had no involvement." "That's not entirely accurate," Rebecca interjected. She pulled out a folder of documents. "We have evidence that several major deals were negotiated at social events, organized and hosted by Mrs. Mitchell. Her social connections, particularly through her late mother's charity work, were instrumental in Mr. Mitchell's business expansion." Richard scoffed audibly. "This is ridiculous. Sarah didn't do anything but spend my money and play house." "Mr. Mitchell," Judge Patterson warned, "you'll have your opportunity to testify if necessary." The hearing continued with both sides presenting financial documents and arguing over asset division. Sarah tried to focus, but the contractions were getting stronger and closer together. This wasn't Braxton Hicks. This was real labor, 3 weeks early. "Your Honor," Rebecca was saying, "we also need to address the issue of custody. Mr. Mitchell has indicated he wants full custody of the child." "That's correct," Bradley confirmed. "My client questions the paternity and believes Mrs. Mitchell is unfit to raise the child, given her emotional instability." "Emotional instability?" Rebecca's voice rose. "She's been abused for 3 years. Any emotional distress she's experiencing is a direct result of Mr. Mitchell's actions. These are serious allegations, Judge Patterson said, his eyes moving between the parties. Mr. Mitchell, are you truly questioning the paternity of this child? Richard stood, his expression cold. Your Honor, my wife was desperate to keep me. I wouldn't put it past her to have gotten pregnant by someone else to trap me in the marriage, Sarah gasped, both from the cruel words and from another contraction. Emma noticed her distress immediately. Your Honor, Emma said, standing. My client needs a brief recess. But Madison had noticed too, and something ugly flashed in her eyes. She stood abruptly, shaking off Richard's restraining hand. Oh, please, Madison said loudly. She's faking it for sympathy, just like she's been faking being a victim this whole time. Miss Cole, sit down, Judge Patterson ordered. But Madison was beyond listening. She stormed around the table towards Sarah, her face twisted with rage. You pathetic little nobody. You think you can take Richard's money? You think that baby will keep him tied to you? Everything happened in slow motion. Madison raised her hand, and before anyone could react, she slapped Sarah hard across the face. The sound echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Sarah fell backward, her hands instinctively going to protect her belly. Emma caught her before she hit the ground, but the damage was done. Sarah cried out in pain as a strong contraction seized her body, and she felt a warm gush of fluid. My water, Sarah gasped. My water just broke. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Judge Patterson was on his feet, shouting for security. Rebecca was calling 911. Emma cradled Sarah protectively, her face a mask of fury as she glared at Madison. You assault a pregnant woman in front of a judge. Emma's voice was deadly quiet. You just ended your own future. Madison seemed to realize what she'd done, her face draining of color. I didn't mean... She provoked me. Security, arrest Ms. Cole for assault, Judge Patterson ordered as two officers entered the courtroom. His face was thunderous, all judicial impartiality gone. Mr. Mitchell, control your companion. But Richard just stood there, looking inconvenienced rather than concerned. This is all very dramatic, but surely we can continue the hearing. Continue? Emma whirled on him. Your pregnant wife is in labor because your mistress assaulted her, and you want to continue? She's my ex-wife, Richard corrected coldly. Or she will be soon. Sarah moaned as another contraction hit. They were coming fast now, too fast. The baby, she panted. Something's wrong. It's too early. Judge Patterson came down from the bench, and for a moment his professional mask slipped. He looked at Sarah with an expression of deep concern, almost paternal. The ambulance is on the way, he said gently. Then to Emma, take care of her. I'm not leaving her, Emma said firmly, as the EMTs arrived and began attending to Sarah. Madison was being handcuffed. Richard, do something, she shrieked. Richard's response chilled everyone in the room. You're on your own, Madison. I don't associate with criminals. Madison's face transformed from disbelief to rage. You bastard! I did everything for you. I got rid of your second wife, the same way, remember? You promised me. Shut up! Richard roared, but it was too late. Judge Patterson's voice cut through the chaos. Detective Roberts, I believe we need to expand this investigation. Mr. Bradley, advise your client not to leave town. Detective Michelle Roberts, who'd been observing from the gallery, stepped forward. Already on it, Your Honor. As the EMTs prepared to transport Sarah, she grabbed Emma's hand. Don't leave me, please! I'm scared! I'm not going anywhere, Emma promised. We're family, remember? Judge Patterson watched the scene, his expression unreadable. Miss Patterson, accompany your client to the hospital. This hearing is postponed indefinitely. And Mr. Mitchell, he turned to Richard with barely concealed disgust. You might want to hire a criminal attorney. You're going to need one. As Sarah was wheeled out, She heard Madison screaming from the hallway where she was being arrested. "This isn't over! You can't do this to me! I know things! I know everything!" The last thing Sarah saw before the ambulance doors closed was Emma's fierce, protective face, and behind her, Judge Patterson standing in the courthouse entrance, his judicial robes billowing in the wind, watching them leave with an expression of profound sadness. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Sarah gripped the bed rails as another contraction tore through her body, her knuckles white with the effort of not screaming. The monitors beeped steadily, tracking her baby's heart rate, which the nurses kept checking with increasingly concerned expressions. "You're doing great," Emma said, dabbing Sarah's forehead with a cool cloth. She hadn't left Sarah's side since they'd arrived 2 hours ago. "Just breathe through it." "It's too early," Sarah panted. "He's not ready. I'm not ready." Dr. Patricia Holbrook had arrived shortly after them, not as Sarah's therapist, but as her support person. "Sarah, listen to me," she said in her calm, professional voice. "Your baby is 37 weeks. That's considered full term. He's ready, and so are you." Another contraction hit, and Sarah cried out. The pain was different from what she'd expected, not just physical, but emotional. Everything was happening too fast. The assault, the revelation about Emma, the labor. Her mind couldn't process it all. "Where's Rebecca?" Sarah asked between contractions. "She's handling things at the courthouse," Emma replied. "Madison's being formally charged, and there's a lot of paperwork. She said to tell you not to worry about anything except having this baby." A nurse came in to check Sarah's dilation. 7 centimeters, she announced. "You're progressing quickly. The doctor will be in soon." As the nurse left, Sarah grabbed Emma's hand. "Tell me about our father. Tell me about Judge Patterson." Emma hesitated. "Are you sure you want to do this now? I need something to focus on besides the pain. Please." Emma sat on the edge of the bed, still holding Sarah's hand. "Our mother, Helen, had a brief relationship with William Patterson before she married your father. She was young, working as a court reporter. He was a young attorney, brilliant and ambitious. They fell in love, but his family didn't approve. She wasn't from the right social class." Sarah listened, trying to picture her mother as a young woman in love. Helen had never spoken of any man before Sarah's father. "She left without telling him she was pregnant," Emma continued. "She moved to another state, had me, and raised me alone for 5 years. Then she met your father, David Parker. They married, and she had you. I think she wanted to give us both the family she never had." "But why didn't she tell me about you?" Sarah asked, then tensed as another contraction began. Emma helped her breathe through it before answering. "Your father didn't want me. He tolerated my presence but made it clear I wasn't his daughter. When they divorced, I was 12, and you were 7. The custody agreement gave me to our mother only part-time, and your father got primary custody of you. He didn't want us to have contact. That's why I barely remember you," Sarah whispered. Mum would sometimes mention an older sister, but Dad said she was confused. She wasn't confused. She was heartbroken. She wrote me letters about you constantly, how smart you were, how kind. She saved every picture, every report card. When she died, she left me a box full of memories of you." Tears streamed down Sarah's face, mixing with sweat. "And our father, Judge Patterson? I found out about him after Mum died. She left me a letter explaining everything. I reached out to him 6 months ago. He was shocked, but accepted me immediately. He's been trying to make up for lost time." "Does he know about me?" Emma shook her head. "I wanted to tell him, but then I found out about your situation with Richard. I thought you had enough to deal with. I was planning to tell you both after the divorce was finalized." The door opened and a doctor entered, but it wasn't the obstetrician Sarah expected. It was an older man with kind eyes and gentle hands. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Dr. Anderson. Dr. Kumar is in emergency surgery, so I'll be delivering your baby. How are we doing?" "Scared," Sarah admitted. "That's perfectly normal," he said, checking her chart. "I understand you've had quite a traumatic day, but your baby's heart rate is strong, and you're progressing well. We're going to take excellent care of both of you." As he examined her, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text. Emma checked it and gasped. "What is it?" Sarah asked. "It's from Rebecca. Madison's talking. She's confessing to everything, including—" Emma trailed off. "Including what?" "Including what happened to Richard's second wife, Sarah. She pushed her down the stairs when she was pregnant. The baby died, and the wife committed suicide. Madison and Richard covered it up." Sarah felt sick. Oh my God. He knew. He knew what she was capable of, and he brought her near me. "Don't think about that now," Dr. Holbrook interjected. "Focus on your breathing. Focus on your baby." But Sarah couldn't stop thinking about it. The pattern was clear now. Richard picked young, vulnerable women, used them, and then discarded them when someone more interesting came along. And Madison had been his willing accomplice, eliminating obstacles. "I could have been next," Sarah whispered. "But you weren't," Emma said firmly. "You're here, you're safe, and you're about to bring a beautiful baby into the world." Another contraction hit, this one so strong that Sarah screamed. Dr. Anderson checked her again. 10 centimeters. It's time to push." The next hour was a blur of pain and effort. Sarah pushed with everything she had, Emma holding one leg and a nurse holding the other. Dr. Holbrook stood by her head, coaching her through each push. "I can't," Sarah sobbed after what felt like the 100th push. "I'm not strong enough." "Yes, you are," Emma said fiercely. "You survived Richard. You survived Madison. You survived years of abuse. You can do this. Think of your mother," Dr. Holbrook added. "Think of Helen's strength. It's in you." Sarah thought of her mother, of the secrets she'd kept, the pain she'd endured. She thought of the sister she'd lost and found again. She thought of the father she'd never known watching over her in that courtroom. And she found a reserve of strength she didn't know existed. "One more big push," Dr. Anderson encouraged. "The head is almost out." Sarah bore down with everything she had, a primal scream tearing from her throat, and then suddenly the pressure was gone, replaced by a thin, angry wail. "It's a boy," Dr. Anderson announced, placing the squirming, crying baby on Sarah's chest. A perfect, healthy boy. Sarah looked down at her son through tears of joy and exhaustion. He was small but perfect, with a shock of dark hair and tiny fists that waved in protest at being born. The moment he was placed on her chest, he stopped crying, as if recognizing her heartbeat. "He's beautiful," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her own face. "What's his name?" Sarah hadn't decided. She'd gone back and forth on names for months, but looking at him now, she knew. "William," she said softly. "William Patterson Parker, after both his grandfathers." Emma's hand flew to her mouth. "Sarah, he should know where he comes from. All of it. The good and the complicated." Dr. Holbrook smiled. "Your mother would be so proud." As the nurses cleaned and measured baby William, Sarah's phone rang. Emma answered it, stepping away to talk. When she returned, her face was pale. That was Rebecca. Richard's been arrested. Madison gave the police enough evidence to charge him as an accessory to murder. And Sarah, Judge Patterson knows about you being his daughter. Rebecca had to tell him to explain why she needed emergency custody papers drawn up. What did he say? "He's on his way here, if you don't want to see him." "No," Sarah interrupted. "I want to meet him. William should know his grandfather." An hour later, after Sarah had been moved to a recovery room and William had been fed for the first time, there was a soft knock at the door. Judge Patterson entered, still in his judicial robes, his face a mix of emotions Sarah couldn't read. He stood at the foot of her bed, seemingly at a loss for words. Finally he spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "I had 2 daughters. All this time, I had 2 daughters and I didn't know." "Mom never told you?" Sarah asked. He shook his head. "After Emma found me, I wondered if Helen had other children, but I never imagined you were in my courtroom today. My daughter was being hurt in front of me, and I didn't know." "You protected me anyway," Sarah pointed out, "even without knowing." "May I?" He gestured toward the baby. Sarah nodded, and Emma carefully placed William in his grandfather's arms. Judge Patterson looked down at his grandson with wonder. "He's named after you," Sarah said quietly, "and my adoptive father. I want him to know his whole family history." "Helen would have loved this," Judge Patterson said, his voice breaking. "She always wanted our families to be together." "We are now," Emma said, putting an arm around Sarah. "Maybe not in the way she imagined, but we're here." As they sat together, 3 generations united by secrets, pain, and ultimately love, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. The road ahead would be difficult. There would be trials, literally and figuratively. Richard and Madison would have to face justice. Sarah would have to rebuild her life as a single mother. But she wasn't alone. She had a sister who'd searched for her, a father who'd unknowingly protected her, and a son who would grow up surrounded by love instead of narcissistic abuse. The baby stirred in his grandfather's arms, and Judge Patterson began to hum softly, an old lullaby that Sarah recognized with a start. Her mother used to hum the same tune. "Mum taught you that?" Emma asked, apparently recognizing it too. "No," Judge Patterson said softly. "I taught it to her." She must have remembered. In that moment, Sarah understood that love could transcend time, secrets, and even death. Her mother had given her more than she'd ever known: a sister's protection, a father's justice, and the strength to stand up to those who would harm her. 3 days after William's birth, Sarah sat in her hospital bed, finally able to process everything that had happened. The small room had become a sanctuary of sorts, filled with flowers from well-wishers and guarded by hospital security after Richard's arrest made national news. Emma arrived early that morning with coffee and bagels, a routine they'd quickly established. She moved around the room with easy familiarity, adjusting blinds and organizing the growing pile of legal documents that seemed to multiply daily. "The media is calling it the SLAP herd around the world," Emma said, showing Sarah her phone. "The video has gone viral, 20 million views and counting." Sarah winced. "There's video of the courthouse security camera. It's actually helping our case. The public is completely on your side. Madison attacking a pregnant woman in court. Even Richard's PR team can't spin that." Baby William stirred in his bassinet, making small sucking sounds. Sarah reached for him, still marveling at how natural it felt to be his mother. "What's the latest from Rebecca?" Emma's expression grew serious. "Richard's bail was set at $5 million. He posted it immediately, of course. Madison's was set at $500,000, but no one's come forward to pay it, so she's still in jail, and singing like a canary. Detective Roberts says she's given them enough to put Richard away for 20 years. Financial fraud, conspiracy, and potentially murder charges for his second wife." Sarah adjusted William's position, letting him nurse. "I still can't believe he knew when Madison said she'd done it before." "Don't think about that," Emma said firmly, sitting on the bed beside her. "Focus on this little guy and getting better. I can't stop thinking about it, though. What if I hadn't found out about the affair? What if I'd stayed? Would I have been next? Emma took her free hand. But you didn't stay. You got out. You're safe. Because of you. If you hadn't shown up at the courthouse, I should have come sooner. I watched you for weeks, trying to figure out how to approach you. I was scared you'd reject me. Sarah squeezed her hand. How could I reject you? You're my sister, the sister I always wanted, but thought I'd imagined. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching William nurse. Then Emma spoke again, her voice tentative. Can I tell you something about why I became a lawyer? Sarah nodded, sensing this was important. When I was 15, I was in an abusive relationship, Emma began. He was older, 18. Everyone thought he was perfect. Good grades, star athlete, charming. But behind closed doors he was controlling, manipulative. He isolated me from friends, monitored my phone, told me I was nothing without him. Sarah's heart ached for her sister. Emma, it went on for a year before Mum found out. She'd been suspicious, but I was good at hiding the bruises. When she finally saw them, she didn't hesitate. She marched down to the police station and filed charges. Then she found me the best therapist and lawyer she could afford. What happened to him? He pled down to a misdemeanor and got probation. But Mum made sure everyone knew what he'd done. She protected me fiercely, even when I was angry at her for ruining my life, as I called it then. Emma's eyes were distant, lost in memory. She told me something I'll never forget. She said, women have to protect each other because the world won't do it for us. We're each other's safety net. That sounds like Mum, Sarah said softly. She talked about you constantly during that time, how she wished you could know me, support me. She said sisters were supposed to face these things together. And now we are, Sarah said, just 20 years late. Emma laughed, wiping tears from her eyes. Better late than never. There was a knock at the door, and Rebecca Taylor entered, looking every inch the powerful attorney, despite having clearly pulled an all-nighter. Good morning, ladies. How's our little warrior? She smiled at William, who had finished nursing and was now sleeping contentedly. Perfect, Sarah said. What's the news? Rebecca's smile turned predatory. Oh, I have such good news. Richard's assets have been frozen pending the criminal investigation. The forensic accountants found hidden accounts worth millions that he didn't disclose. We're talking massive financial fraud. What does that mean for the divorce? It means you're getting everything you deserve and more. But that's not even the best part. Rebecca pulled out her tablet. Madison's confession included details about Richard's business practices. Apparently, he's been using his company to launder money for some very unsavory people. Sarah's eyes widened. Money laundering. The FBI is now involved. Richard Mitchell is going down, and he's going down hard. Emma whistled low. He really thought he was untouchable. Men like him always do, Rebecca said, until they face women who refuse to be victims. Dr. Patricia Holbrook entered then, carrying a small teddy bear. I hope I'm not interrupting. I wanted to check on my favorite patient. We were just discussing Richard's impending downfall, Emma said with satisfaction. Dr. Holbrook set the bear in William's bassinet. How are you processing all of this, Sarah? It's a lot of change very quickly. Sarah considered the question. I feel free for the first time in 3 years. I feel like I can breathe. Is that wrong? Should I feel guilty? Why would you feel guilty? Dr. Holbrook asked. Because I loved him once, or I thought I did. And now his life is destroyed. He destroyed his own life, Rebecca said firmly. You just stopped letting him destroy yours. She's right, Dr. Holbrook agreed. What you're feeling is completely normal. You're grieving the relationship you thought you had while celebrating your freedom from what it actually was. Judge Patterson appeared in the doorway, carrying a bouquet of pink roses. "I'm sorry. Is this a bad time?" "Dad!" Emma stood to hug him. It was still strange for Sarah to hear Emma call him that, to see their easy affection. "How are my girls today?" he asked, his eyes soft as they landed on Sarah and William. "We're good," Sarah said, still getting used to having a father figure in her life. "William's eating well and sleeping better? May I?" He gestured toward the baby. Sarah nodded, and he carefully picked up his grandson, holding him with practiced ease. "You've done this before," she observed. "Emma had terrible colic as a baby," he said, then caught himself. "I mean, that's what your mother told me when we reconnected briefly when Emma was about 1. I got to hold her a few times before she disappeared again." "It's okay, Dad," Emma finished. "We all did what we thought was best at the time." As Judge Patterson rocked William, Rebecca's phone buzzed. She checked it and gasped. "What now?" Sarah asked, almost afraid to know. "Madison's lawyer just contacted me. She wants to make a deal. Full testimony against Richard in exchange for a reduced sentence." "What kind of testimony?" Emma asked. "Everything. Every crime, every affair, every financial manipulation. She has recordings, Sarah. She secretly recorded Richard for years as insurance." The room fell silent as they absorbed this information. "She was planning to blackmail him," Sarah said slowly. "That's why she was so confident." "Exactly. But she didn't count on him throwing her under the bus the moment she became inconvenient." Judge Patterson spoke carefully. "I shouldn't comment on an active case, but speaking purely as a grandfather, I hope justice is served fully." "It will be," Rebecca promised. "I'll make sure of it." Dr. Holbrook checked her watch. "I have to go. But, Sarah, I want to see you next week for a session. You're going to need support processing all of this." After she left, Sarah looked around the room at her assembled support system. Her sister, her father, her attorney. 6 months ago, she'd felt completely alone. Now she had a family, a real family that chose to stand by her. "I want to establish a foundation," Sarah said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. "For women like me, young women trapped in abusive relationships who think they have no options, I want to use whatever money I get from Richard to help others escape." Emma's face lit up. "I'll help. I can provide legal services. I can connect you with other judges and legal professionals who'd support this," Judge Patterson added. "And I'll make sure you get enough money to make a real difference," Rebecca said, with a shark-like smile. William made a small sound, and Sarah looked down at him. "Your daddy might be a narcissistic criminal, but you're going to grow up surrounded by people who fight for justice. You're going to learn that real strength isn't about controlling others. It's about lifting them up." The afternoon sun slanted through the hospital windows as Sarah prepared for discharge. William, now 5 days old, slept peacefully in his car seat, while Emma helped pack the accumulated gifts and flowers. The media attention had been overwhelming. Every major news outlet wanted an interview with the woman whose divorce hearing had exposed a murder conspiracy. "The car is ready," Emma said, zipping up the last bag. "Security will escort us to the parking garage. There are still reporters everywhere." Sarah nodded, adjusting William's blanket one more time. She was nervous about leaving the safety of the hospital, but Dr. Anderson had cleared them both for discharge. "Wait!" a familiar voice called from the doorway. Judge Patterson stood there, looking unusually uncertain. "Could I speak with you privately for a moment, Sarah?" Emma started to leave, but Sarah stopped her. "Stay, please. We're family." Judge Patterson entered, closing the door behind him. He seemed to struggle with his words, so different from the commanding presence he showed in court. "I've been thinking about your mother," he finally said. About Helen. About the choices she made. Sarah waited, sensing this was important. She came to my courtroom once, he continued, about 15 years ago. You would have been 13. It was a custody modification hearing. Your father wanted to move out of state with you. Sarah's breath caught. I remember that. Dad said Mom was being unreasonable. She fought like a lioness for you, represented herself because she couldn't afford an attorney. I didn't know who she was to me then, of course, but I remember being impressed by her determination. Did she win? Partially. I denied the relocation request, but had to maintain the custody arrangement. Your father had better resources, a stable home. Your mother was struggling financially. His voice grew thick with regret. If I'd known she was the Helen I'd loved, if I'd known you were my daughter, you couldn't have known, Sarah said gently, but I should have seen it. You have her eyes, her chin, and the way you held yourself in my courtroom during your hearing, it was exactly how she stood that day, dignified, despite everything. Emma moved closer to their father. Dad, you can't torture yourself with what-ifs, can't I? I had 2 daughters I didn't know about. Helen struggled alone while I advanced my career, became successful, could have helped. She made her choice, Sarah said, surprising herself with the lack of bitterness in her voice. Mum was proud. She wouldn't have wanted help from someone she'd walked away from. Judge Patterson pulled out a worn envelope from his jacket. She sent me this letter a month before she died. I've carried it ever since Emma found me, but I haven't had the courage to open it. He handed it to Sarah. Her name was written on the front in her mother's distinctive handwriting. With trembling fingers, Sarah opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in her mother's careful script. My dearest William, if you're reading this, then Emma has found you, just as I knew she would. She's like you, determined, brilliant, unable to let a mystery go unsolved. There's something else you need to know. You have another daughter. Sarah is yours, though she doesn't know it. David Parker agreed to raise her as his own in exchange for my silence about his affairs. It seemed like the best solution at the time. I was young and foolish and thought I was protecting everyone, but I was wrong. I robbed you of 2 daughters. I robbed them of a father and each other. It's my greatest regret. Sarah is special, William. She has your sense of justice, but also a gentleness that will make her vulnerable to those who would exploit it. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and she's alone. Please, if you can find it in your heart, watch over her. She'll need protection, though she won't know to ask for it. I never stopped loving you. I hope someday you can forgive me. Forever yours, Helen. The letter trembled in Sarah's hands. She knew. She knew you'd find each other. Judge Patterson was crying openly now, something Sarah suspected he rarely did. She tried to tell me so many times. There were phone calls where she'd start to say something, then stop. Now I understand. We can't change the past, Emma said, her own voice thick with emotion. But we're here now, all of us. William chose that moment to wake, his small cry filling the room. Sarah lifted him from his car seat, holding him close. Your grandson needs you, she said to Judge Patterson. We both do. It doesn't matter how we got here. What matters is that we're family now. Judge Patterson moved closer, his hand hovering uncertainly over William's head. I want to be a good grandfather, a good father. But I don't know how. I've been a judge for so long, I've forgotten how to just be a person. You protected me in that courtroom, Sarah reminded him, even before you knew. That's being a father. And you've been wonderful with me, Emma added. Patient, kind, making up for lost time without pushing too hard. "You girls are being too generous," he said, but Sarah could see how much their words meant to him. Rebecca Taylor entered without knocking, her face grim. "We have a problem." Everyone tensed. "Richard's out on bail and he's been giving interviews. He's spinning the story, claiming Madison manipulated him, that he's a victim too." Some people are buying it. Sarah felt the familiar flutter of panic in her chest. "He's trying to control the narrative. Not on my watch," Rebecca said firmly. "I've arranged for you to do one interview, just one, with a journalist I trust. We tell your story, the whole story, and then we let the legal system do its work." "I don't know if I'm ready." "You are," Emma interrupted. "You're the strongest person I know." "She's right," Judge Patterson said. "And you won't be alone. We'll all be there with you." Sarah looked down at William, who was gazing up at her with unfocused eyes. For him, she could do anything. "When?" she asked Rebecca. "Tomorrow afternoon at Emma's apartment. Neutral territory, comfortable setting." "Speaking of which," Emma said, "you're both coming home with me. I have plenty of room, and you shouldn't be alone." Sarah started to protest, but Emma cut her off. "Mum would haunt me if I let you go anywhere else. Besides, William needs to know his aunt's place. It's going to be his second home." As they prepared to leave, Detective Michelle Roberts arrived. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm sorry to bother you, but I have news." "Good or bad?" Sarah asked warily. "Both. Madison's agreed to testify. She's given us everything. Documents, recordings, even video. Richard's going to prison for a very long time." "And the bad news?" "He's liquidating assets quickly, trying to hide money offshore. We're working to stop it, but some damage has been done." Rebecca's eyes flashed. "How much?" "About 10 million so far. But don't worry, we're tracking it. And with the hidden accounts we found, there's still plenty for Mrs. Mitchell and William." "It's not about the money," Sarah said quietly. "It never was. It's about justice. And you'll have both," Judge Patterson said with the authority of his position. "I may have to recuse myself from the criminal case, but I have colleagues who will ensure justice is served." As they made their way to the parking garage, surrounded by security and family, Sarah felt a strange sense of peace. The man she'd married had turned out to be a monster, but from the ashes of that relationship, she'd gained so much more. "Thank you," she said to Emma as they reached the car. "For what?" "For finding me, for being my sister, for not giving up." Emma hugged her carefully, mindful of William between them. "Family doesn't give up. Mum taught us that." Judge Patterson loaded the bags into the trunk, looking more like a regular grandfather than a distinguished jurist. "Helen would be so proud," he said softly, "of both of you." Emma's apartment was a revelation, spacious, modern but warm, with photographs covering every surface. Sarah discovered that many were of her, pictures Emma had found or their mother had sent over the years. It was like seeing her life through someone else's eyes. "This is from your high school graduation," Emma said, pointing to one photo. "Mum was so proud. She cried for hours after." Sarah traced the image with her finger. "She looked so young, so hopeful. I thought she didn't come because she didn't care. Your father wouldn't let her." She watched from across the street. The interview was in 2 hours. Rebecca had prepared Sarah with potential questions, but nothing could really prepare her for telling her story to the world. William was nursing when the journalist arrived, a woman in her 40s named Patricia Chen, with kind eyes and a reputation for handling sensitive stories with care. "Thank you for trusting me with this," Patricia said, setting up her recorder. "I want you to know that you have complete control. If you need to stop at any time, we stop." Sarah nodded, adjusting William in her arms. Emma sat beside her. Judge Patterson stood behind the couch, and Rebecca positioned herself where Sarah could see her for support. "Let's start from the beginning," Patricia said gently. "How did you meet Richard Mitchell?" Sarah took a breath and began. "I was 25, working at a charity fundraiser. He was charming, successful, everything I thought I wanted. He pursued me relentlessly. Flowers, gifts, surprise trips. I thought it was romantic. Now I know it was love bombing." "When did things change?" "Gradually. So gradually I didn't notice at first. He'd make comments about my friends being jealous of our relationship, suggest I didn't need to work since he could provide everything. Before I knew it, I was isolated, financially dependent, and completely under his control." "Tell me about the narcissistic abuse." Sarah looked at William, drawing strength from his peaceful face. "Narcissistic abuse is insidious because it makes you doubt your own reality. Richard would tell me I was overreacting, too sensitive, that I was lucky he put up with me. He'd give me the silent treatment for days if I disagreed with him, then act like nothing happened. And when you got pregnant, he was furious, accused me of trying to trap him. That's when I found out about Madison." Patricia leaned forward. "The woman who assaulted you in court." "Yes, though I've learned she was more than just his mistress. She was his accomplice in terrible things." "You mean his second wife's death?" Sarah nodded, tears starting to fall. "A young woman and her baby died because of them, and I could have been next." Emma took her hand as Patricia continued. "How do you feel about Richard now?" Sarah considered the question. "I pity him. He's so empty inside that he has to destroy others to feel powerful. But I also want him held accountable, not just for me, but for all his victims. And Madison? She's a predator who found a willing partner in Richard. They enabled each other's worst impulses." Patricia turned to Judge Patterson. "Your Honor, how does it feel to discover this family connection in such circumstances?" Judge Patterson cleared his throat. "It's been humbling. I've spent my career dispensing justice, but I failed to see the injustice happening to my own daughter. It's made me reconsider many things. Will you preside over the criminal case?" "No, I've recused myself, but I trust my colleagues to handle it appropriately." The interview continued for another hour. Sarah talked about the SLAP, the emergency delivery, finding her sister and father. By the end, she was exhausted, but felt lighter somehow. "One last question," Patricia said. "What message do you have for other women in similar situations?" Sarah looked directly at the camera they'd set up. "You're not crazy. You're not too sensitive. You're not alone. The shame isn't yours. It belongs to your abuser. And you deserve so much better. There are people who will believe you, support you, and help you escape. Please reach out. Your life is waiting on the other side of fear." After Patricia left, they sat in silence for a moment. Then Rebecca's phone exploded with notifications. "What is it?" Emma asked. Rebecca was scrolling rapidly. "The interview won't air until tomorrow, but someone leaked that it happened. Richard's having a meltdown on social media." She showed them his posts, rambling, angry messages about being persecuted, about Sarah being a gold digger, about the unfairness of it all. "He's destroying himself," Judge Patterson observed. "No lawyer would advise this." "James Bradley dropped him as a client this morning," Rebecca said with satisfaction. "No one wants to be associated with him now." William started crying, and Sarah stood to walk him around the apartment. As she passed the window, she saw a crowd gathering outside. "Emma, look!" Emma joined her at the window. Below, women were holding signs. "Justice for Sarah. Protect pregnant women. Believe survivors." "They're supporting you," Emma said in wonder. "They're supporting all of us," Sarah corrected. "Every woman who's been where I've been." The next morning, the interview aired. Within hours, it had been viewed millions of times. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of women sharing their own stories, offering support, demanding justice. But the real victory came that afternoon when Detective Roberts called. "We got him," she said simply. "Richard's been arrested for conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, and fraud. No bail this time. He's not getting out." Sarah sank onto the couch, William in her arms. "It's over. The criminal case is just beginning. But yes, he's going away for a long time." After she hung up, Sarah looked at her assembled family. "I want to go to the courthouse." "Why?" Emma asked. "To see him arrested, to look him in the eye one last time." Judge Patterson stood. "Then we go together." The courthouse was surrounded by media and supporters. As their car pulled up, the crowd parted respectfully. Women reached out to touch Sarah gently, offering words of encouragement. Inside, they found a spot where they could see Richard being brought in. He was in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled, his face haggard. When he saw Sarah, he tried to lunge toward her, but the officers held him back. "You did this!" he shouted. "You ruined everything!" Sarah stepped forward, William secure in her arms, Emma and Judge Patterson flanking her. "No, Richard, you did this. Every choice, every cruelty, every crime. That was all you. You're nothing without me. You were nobody before me, and you'll be nobody after." Sarah smiled then, a genuine smile that seemed to confuse him. "You're wrong. I was somebody before you tried to break me, and I'm definitely somebody now. I'm a survivor, a mother, a sister, a daughter. I'm free." As the officers dragged him away, still ranting, Sarah turned to her family. "Let's go home.